World News on the Papyrus Global TV. I am Christiana Babayo. Trump urges Iran to accept nuclear deal, warns of escalated military response. Colombia plane crash kills 15, including Congress member. Iran warns of unprecedented retaliation as Trump renews military threats. India says Nipah virus outbreak contained after 2 cases confirmed. Search and rescue efforts continue in Mozambique after weeks of heavy rains. Burkina Faso votes to join Vienna Convention as it advances toward nuclear power. Gold mine collapse in South Sudan kills 13 in just 6. And now the news info. United States President Donald Trump has renewed calls for Iran to return to negotiations on its nuclear program, warning that failure to reach a diplomatic agreement could result in a significantly stronger military response. Trump confirmed that the United States has deployed a warship and expanded naval presence in the region, describing the move as a precautionary measure in response to heightened security concerns and potential threats linked to Iran's nuclear activities. He said the deployment is part of Washington's broader strategy to maintain regional stability while applying pressure on Tehran to comply with international nuclear standards. The president reiterated the U.S. position that Iran must not be allowed to develop or acquire nuclear weapons, emphasizing that diplomatic engagement remains the preferred path, but warning that military actions remain on the table if Iran refuses to cooperate. He also referenced previous U.S. operations targeting Iranian-linked nuclear infrastructure, signaling that any future response would be more decisive and far-reaching. A small passenger aircraft crash in northeastern Colombia has claimed the lives of 15 people, including Congressman Diógenes Quintero, in one of the country's deadliest aviation incidents in recent months. The aircraft crashed shortly after taking off from Camilo Daza Airport in Cúcuta, according to Colombia's Civil Aeronautics Authority, which confirmed that the plane was carrying 13 passengers and 2 crew members. Emergency responders deployed to the crash site reported no survivors, with wreckage scattered across rugged terrain, complicating rescue and recovery operations. Authorities said the flight was operating on a domestic route when it lost contact with air traffic control moments after departure. Investigators are examining possible causes, including mechanical failure, weather conditions, pilot error, and technical malfunctions. Black box recovery efforts are underway as part of the formal accident investigation. Among the deceased was Diógenes Quintero, a lawmaker elected to Colombia's Congress in 2022. Quintero represented one of the country's special peace constituencies, a category of parliamentary seats created under the 2016 peace agreement to amplify the voices of communities affected by decades of armed conflict. Political leaders, government officials, and civil society groups have expressed condolences, describing Quintero as a strong advocate for peace building, victims' rights, and regional development. Flags were lowered in some public institutions in tribute to the victims of the crash. Iran has issued a fresh warning to the United States, vowing a shift of powerful response to any military aggression, following renewed threats from U.S. President Donald Trump, escalating fears of a broader regional conflict. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said the country's armed forces are fully prepared to respond immediately and powerfully to any potential attack on Iranian authority, citing lessons learned from previous confrontations, including last year's Israel-Iran conflict and U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear-related sites. The warning follows Trump's announcement that the U.S. naval armada is moving towards Iran, a long-renewed pressure on Tehran to return to negotiations after its nuclear program. Trump urged Iran to make a deal and reiterated his administration's demand that the country abandon any nuclear weapons ambition, warning that future attacks could be more severe than previous military actions. In response, Iran's mission to the United Nations said Tehran remains open to dialogue based on mutual respect, but cautioned that it would carry out unprecedented retaliation if provoked. The mission referenced past U.S. engagements in the Middle East, warning Washington against repeating costly strategic mistakes. Indian authorities have declared that a Nipah virus outbreak in the eastern state of West Bengal has been contained after confirming only 2 cases and ensuring that all identified contacts have tested negative for the case, officials said. The Ministry of Health and Family Welfare reported late Tuesday, 27 January, that the 2 confirmed cases were detected in West Bengal since December 2025 and that 196 individuals linked to these cases were identified, traced, monitored, and tested, with none returning a positive result. The containment announcement was aimed at quelling speculation following earlier media reports about broader spread. Health authorities said the outbreak was controlled through enhanced surveillance, rigorous laboratory testing, field investigations, and targeted public health measures, with isolated patients receiving supportive care as standard practice for Nipah infections, which have no licensed vaccine or specific antiviral treatment. The virus is known to spread from animals, particularly fruit bats, to humans and between people through close contact, and is associated with a high fatality rate of 40 to 75%, according to the World Health Organization. The announcement triggered responses from several Asian nations, prompting them to tighten airport and border health screenings, including temperature checks and health declarations at major entry points to prevent potential spread. We will now go on a short break, and when we come back, the news will continue. Stay tuned.
The Paparazzi Global, we don't just cover events, we create cinematic experiences. From red carpets to birthdays, gala dinners, and your fairy tale weddings, we bring your moments to life with high-tech precision. Our gadgets are smarter, our lenses sharper, and our team simply world-class. Trust the Paparazzi Global to tell your story in the boldest, brightest way possible.
Welcome back, and now the news will continue. Search and rescue operations are ongoing across Mozambique as the country grapples with the aftermath of weeks of unusually heavy rains that have triggered devastating floods, submerged homes and infrastructure, and displaced hundreds of thousands of people. Mozambique's Institute for Disaster Management and Risk Reduction has reported at least 103 confirmed deaths, with more than 650,000 people displaced across southern and central parts of the country. Many communities remain cut off as floodwaters have washed away roads and bridges, forcing emergency teams to rely on boats and air assets to reach isolated areas. Acting Executive Director of Action Aid Mozambique, Marcia Kosa, highlighted logistical challenges, noting that some locations, particularly in Gaza and Manica provinces, are only accessible by waterways due to damaged infrastructure. Authorities and humanitarian partners warn that conditions in temporary shelters are worsening, increasing the risk of cholera and other waterborne diseases amid overcrowded camps. Burkina Faso's Transitional Assembly has approved the country's accession to the Vienna Convention on Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage, a key step in its long-term plan to pursue civil nuclear energy development. The vote comes as part of Burkina Faso's effort to establish the legal and regulatory frameworks required for international cooperation on nuclear energy. The Vienna Convention, administered by the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, sets internationally recognized standards for nuclear liability and compensation in the event of an accident. Membership is viewed as a prerequisite for countries planning to build and operate nuclear facilities. The government's move reflects the broader policy goal of expanding Burkina Faso's energy mix to include nuclear power, aimed at addressing persistent energy shortages and enhancing power sector reliability. In June 2025, officials signed a cooperation agreement with Russia's state nuclear corporation Rosatom to support feasible studies and infrastructure planning for a future nuclear power plant, a first of its kind in the landlocked West African nation. Burkina Faso President Apollonia Joachim Kielem Di Tambela said the Ascension vote is part of a structured roadmap towards energy diversification, with clear nuclear energy seen as a potential solution to to chronic power outages and rising demand for electricity. The government has emphasized that compliance with international safety and liability standards will be central to its nuclear strategy. At least 13 people have died and 6 others injured following the collapse of unstable mine shafts at a gold site in South Kordofan State, Sudan, highlighting ongoing safety challenges in artisanal and small-scale mining amid broader regional pressures on the industry. The incident occurred at an abandoned gold mine near Fakrum, where local miners had reportedly been extracting gold despite warnings that the shafts were unsafe and officially closed by authorities. Officials said the collapse trapped workers who were operating in restricted and structurally compromised tunnels when the earth gave way. Rescue teams and community volunteers worked for hours to retrieve bodies and evacuate the injured, some of whom sustained fractures and severe trauma. Those hurt in the collapse were taken to nearby health facilities for emergency treatment, while relatives and neighbors gathered at the site in shock and mourning. The Sudanese Mineral Resources Company confirmed the toll and said preliminary assessments indicate the victims were operating in 5 interconnected abandoned shafts, all classified as unsafe for mining due to risk of cave-ins. SMRC officials reiterated that the closure notices were issued precisely because the structures could not support continued activity. South Sudan's mining sector has seen a surge in informal gold mining over the past decade, driven by economic necessity and fluctuating global gold prices. While large scale mining projects are regulated under government licenses and oversight, artisanal miners often operate with minimal safety equipment or technical supervision, significantly increasing the risk of accidents. And that's all we have on World News on the Papyrus Global TV. I am Christiana Babayo. Thanks for joining us.